Good afternoon, everyone. This is Jake Cooley, live from the Santa Closet in ITMC, here to teach you how to use some of the basic features of Adobe Lightroom for photo editing. So the first thing you're going to want to do is open up Adobe Lightroom. On the Mac, you can do this by doing Command Space, and if you start typing in Lightroom, it should pop up there. And it's going to ask you to open up a catalog. Here, the catalog that was being used before doesn't exist, so you're going to want to click choose a different catalog, and then if this is the first time you're editing these photos, create new catalog. And then the naming convention we usually go with is the name of the event. So in this case, I'll just do test, followed by your name. And if you want to get really specific, you can input the date, but I'm not going to do that since I don't think too many of these Jake tests will be created. Oh, I guess it already exists. So let's do Jake test 2. And then Lightroom's going to open up. And the next thing you're going to want to do is import your photos. So in the bottom left-hand corner, you can see import. And then I already picked out some photos that I'm going to want to use today to show off some of the features in Lightroom. So then once you're done selecting all your photos, you just click Import All, and then they'll appear in your menu here. And this is the library portion of Lightroom where it shows all of your pictures. And before I start editing any of my photos, something I like to do is go through and rate all of them. And you can do that by pressing 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. And you can see the little stars down here will show what the rating of your photo is. I usually just do 0 or 5. And let's say I don't want to use this picture of Diane here, and I only set the pictures I want to edit to 5 stars. I can go down to this filter menu here and change it from filters off to rated, and then it will only show the photos that I rated 1 star or greater. So that's pretty useful because once you go to the develop menu, it'll only show the photos that you want to edit, and you don't have to worry about editing a photo and wasting time on something that you're not planning on publishing. But I'm going to go back to filters off because I can bring Diane back here. And next you're going to want to go to the develop menu, which is where you're going to be doing your editing. So in Lightroom, there's a lot of possibilities of what you can do with a photo, but for most of the pictures you're going to be editing, let's say event photography or anything that's kind of a lot of photos, you're not going to have a lot of time to spend on each individual photo, so you're just going to be doing basic editing. And that's where this basic menu comes in handy, hence the name. Let's go to this photo here. So as you can see, this isn't a bad photo, it's just a little bit overexposed. So if I wanted to bring down that exposure a little bit, I could do that. And you can change that with the histogram up here, which I prefer to use since it's a little bit more precise than the buttons down here, or the sliders. But you can do either. It's really up to your own preference, but this is a little bit less precise. So as you can see, if I click Y, the exposure has been bumped down, so it's not overexposed anymore. And after changing my exposure, I'll usually head on to my blacks and my whites next. So blacks will show you, if you hold down the Alt key and press the clicker button, it will show you exactly what's a pure black image inside of your photo, or pure black color. And the same goes for the whites. If you hold down Alt and click, it'll show you exactly what's a pure white in the image. Now, obviously, there's not going to be a pure black and a pure white in every photo. So if you go purely off of what the graph is telling you and you try to get rid of all the whites, it's going to make your image appear a little bit unnatural. So for this, you can mess with it a little bit, but don't go too crazy trying to get a pure black or a pure white in every image. And it'll also show you the colors that are being lost in the photo up here with shadow clipping, and then I think this is highlight clipping. Yeah. So you want to try and retain as much color in the photo as possible. So yeah, see right now it's gray, so we're not losing any of the colors. And then since there is the sun in the background, you're never going to get rid of all of that pure white light. So you just have to do your best. Next, there's the highlights and the shadows. Highlights affect how intense the highlights in your image are. So if you're looking at the sun in the background here, if I bring these highlights all the way down, you can see that it gets rid of a lot of the pure whites in the image. It reduces their intensity. Say I set this back to 0 by double clicking, it'll do that too. And the same goes for the shadows. If I bump these shadows down, there will be a lot more shadow around Claire's face here. And that obviously makes it look a little underexposed. So I'll probably just bump this down maybe to -25. And with a lot of this editing, you have to go off of the histogram, but also off of your eye. If the photo looks unnatural, obviously go with what your eye tells you rather than the histogram, because let's say I clicked auto here, it'll make the photo look really yellow and weird. So even though the computer is trying to make it look like the best image that the computer thinks it'll be, you also have to go off of what you think the best image will look like. That just comes with experience and practice. So after this basic toning menu here, there's also contrast. If you want to make your image look a little bit punchier, you can bump that up a little bit or dial it back to add a little bit more of a muted look. And there's also temperature. Make the image look a little bit cooler or a little bit warmer. I think the white balance or the temperature on this photo looks fine, so I'm just going to leave it as is. And there's also tint. So to demonstrate tint, I'm actually going to go to this photo here. You can see it's a very red photo. It's at sunset, so there's a lot of red light bouncing off of her face. So if you wanted to get rid of that, you could lower the warmth of the photo a little bit and get rid of some of that red, and also bring the tint a little bit more to the green side rather than purple, and you'll get rid of a lot of that red color in the photo. Personally, I like the original look, so I'm just going to leave it as is. Maybe bring the temperature down a little bit, but I'm not going to mess with that too much, just for demonstration purposes. There's also your presence menu down here, which is clarity, vibrance, and saturation. Let's say we have this picture of Charlotte here. If I bring the saturation all the way up or bring the vibrance all the way up, it's going to be a very different image from the original. Adds a lot more color presence into the photo. In this specific example, it's going to do a lot, add a lot of color, but you want to be very sparing with it in other photos. Otherwise, you'll make your person look like an Oompa Loompa or very orange. So I usually never go above 5 or 10 for saturation. With vibrance, you can get a little bit more, you can go a little bit farther since it doesn't affect the photo as much. And more so kind of deals with the different hues of the color in the photo. So I can maybe set this to around like 11, 12. Usually never go above maybe like 35 or 40 with that. But you can do a lot of cool stuff with the vibrance. Next, there's we'll go back to this photo. There are the radial filters and the graduated filters. And what these do is they allow you to manipulate a specific area of the photo without affecting everything else. So if I have a radial filter here and I drag it onto her face, then you always want to click invert mask, otherwise it'll change everything outside of the circle. We want to change what's inside. And I use this a lot for brightening up faces. So say I bring the exposure up a little bit here, maybe drop the shadows a little, bump up the highlights, maybe add a little bit more saturation. You can affect only her face without upping the exposure of the other sections of the photo. And you can add as many of these as you want. Obviously don't go too crazy, but they are there and they're very useful. Next, there's the graduated filter, and these are very useful for stretching out a specific effect that you want to go onto the photo. Say I mess with the exposure here, it'll brighten up this lower region, or wherever it'll affect the area where the filter starts the most, and then it'll drag that out throughout the rest of the filter very smoothly and very evenly. So as before, it was very dark down here. It brightens that up, and yeah, just brightens up some of the darker areas of the photo. And the very last thing for basic editing is your crop. So if I click crop here, I can change the aspect ratio of the photo. I think the original is fine. Maybe bring the crop down on this photo a little bit. And then you get a tighter shot. Sorry about that. And yeah, that's cropping in a nutshell. If you had a photo that you wanted to rotate, say it was wrong thing. You can change the aspect ratio here. I'm going to go back to the original. If you wanted to rotate the photo, you go to Photo up in the menu here, and you can rotate left, rotate right, and do all that jazz. So that's basic editing in a nutshell. Hope you learned something, and if you want to, once you're done and you want to export all of your photos, you can do Command A or Control A on Windows. Go down to Export. We're going to save these onto the desktop. And you usually want to put it into a folder. Let's just name this Jake Test. Same name. And then when you're done with your photos, you always want to write Final in all caps, so that, say, whoever is posting your photos, or just for your own personal reference, you know that these are the edited copies of the photo, and they're just easier to find. In file settings, you want it to be JPEG, the quality set to 100, and then 300 pixels per inch is the standard that we go with for image sizing. So once you make sure all of those are okay, you click export, and then it'll export all of your photos for you. So that's basic editing in a nutshell. I'll be making a more advanced editing tutorial sometime soon, so you can check that out if you want to get a little bit more in depth with photo editing. But as for now, that's all I have. Thanks for watching, and bye-bye.